welcome everyone. Good afternoon. It's a very exciting time to welcome Joe Schmidt as the next Wallabies head coach. Joe brings with him an enormous amount of experience, but also enormous amount of success with each team that Joe has coached. Importantly, the process that we've run has been very thorough, and Joe will report through to Director of High Performance Peter Horn. Something I've been very passionate about is putting the right people in the right roles in the right order, and really excited to have Peter Horn and David Nusafora in the high performance roles, and now with the appointment of Joe Schmidt as head coach. It's a really exciting time for the Wallabies and also for rugby in Australia. So we're looking forward to the next period ahead, and now I'll open for questions. Thank you.
Phil, why was Joe the right man to take over and take the Wallabies into the future?
Yeah, I think right now, if you look at rugby in Australia, it was important for us to look at the best coaches in the world to take the team forward. And if you go through the background, the history, the high level of capability, but also from my early indications, but also from a lot of people I've spoken to, the right person as well, which is so important as we try and build more and more trust across our system, but also more and more trust with the community. And I'm very confident Joe will bring that, and the level of capability and the track record of success is really important.
There's a lot of commentary. There's still a lot of belief that it needs to be an Aussie. Obviously, that wasn't a necessity in the eyes of the people that made the decision. Why doesn't it need to be an Australian coach in the Australian national team?
Yeah, I think international sports moved on a lot in the last 10 to 20 years, and if you look across different sports, national teams go with the most capable people, and we know that not just in our playing development, but also in our coaching development, we need to bring more good players through the system, and we need to develop our coaches as well. And I think Joe, not only in his capability of what he'll deliver, but also how well he'll work with the system to continue to develop coaches already within the system, but also Australians that are offshore as well.
Phil, last few coaches have been given longer contracts. Why only 2 years for Joe? Don't trust him, or he got burnt last time?
No, I think certainly trust him, and that's part of the appointment process. But look, I think I'm sure that Joe will answer the question. But that was a discussion between Joe and Rugby Australia, and if we look at the path forward, and we have the British and Irish Lions in July. Finishing the start of August next year, and building out a system and level of trust and capability across everything we're doing is really important, and that's what we're focused on at the moment.
Will his future depend on the result of the Lions? So I think with the World Cup, you said Eddie's pass mark was going to be making the semis, or the Wallabies pass mark. Is there a pass mark for Joe?
We're not talking, I guess, around pass marks. I think we've got a lot of work to do across our performances across our system. And right across rugby within Australia and building trust. So right now we're not talking about results. It's actually building a system and level of capability right throughout, from the Wallabies right through to our pathway systems.
Joe, welcome to the Wallabies head coaching role.
Thanks.
When did the Wallabies coaching role start to get on your radar?
I guess when Peter was appointed. I've worked with Peter before. I've obviously worked with David Nusafora for some time, and with those guys in place, I thought it was a good opportunity to try to pitch in and get Australia up and running, because I do think that the World Cup was not an Australian team that I recognised, certainly not from my time kind of coming here last time with the Irish in 2018. It was a super contest right through the 3 test matches, and so there's this period of time now to work out how and what's next. But that was when it first really came on my radar, and I'm probably a little bit surprised that I'm here. I thought I'd retired when I went back to New Zealand, but I'm very poor at doing that. Obviously, being involved with the Blues and the All Blacks since then, and I'm pretty excited. This is a is a really unique challenge, I think.
There's been lots of coaches that have struggled, failed perhaps in this role, including New Zealanders. Why do you think you'll be able to succeed where others haven't?
Well, I can't say that I'll succeed or otherwise at the moment. I'm just getting my feet under the desk and trying to get a better measure of who's out there and what capability they have. I've certainly observed a lot with Australian players, obviously preparing to play against them, but getting to know the people behind the player. And if we can get the right people and they can perform on the field, I do think we can build things, because the flagship, if we can get the flagship going, I think we can start to get the players' aspirations where they need to be, and I think with Pete trying to build a little bit more alignment and through that high performance system and the pathways strengthen. But I do think it's also a little bit of it's a rebuild that will take a little bit of time, and I'm probably a pragmatist. I can't promise anything other than I'll be working really hard to try to make it as successful as it can be, and trying to get some early wins on the board, and those wins may be just that we perform better, even if we don't quite get the outcomes we're looking for. But I'm also a realistic coach. You're judged on your outcomes, and you live or die by them. So we'll be working toward those as well.
Joe, was it your preference for a longer deal?
No, it's pretty much public knowledge that I have a young man at home who suffers quite badly with epilepsy, and this job will take me away from the time that I'd sort of committed to pitching in and helping him out. So if we can get the job done over the next 18 months and we can get the momentum heading in the right direction, then I'll feel like I've done my part of it, and I'll be happy to hand on. Or if there are some Australian coaches that come through, I'm really keen to try to help get some of the Australian coaches a little bit more experience as well, so that they can pitch up and lead the Wallabies.
Would you say then it's unlikely you would be on post lines? Like, it's a bit of a hit and run job?
No, it's certainly not a hit and run. It just I think for both RA and myself, it just is a good fit at that time. If you were going to make a change before the World Cup, you don't want to do it a year out. You want to make sure that you've got a decent run at it. But at the same time, if we get to the end of the British and Irish Lions series, and things are going in the right direction, and the discussion amongst the board and Phil and Pete is that the best thing is for me to stay, then that's a bridge we'll cross then.
Joe, there's plenty of people out there, as we sort of alluded to with Phil before, who think that it has to be an Aussie. You've been a New Zealander who coached Ireland, was very successful. So why can a coach, or how do you make a successful fist of a job when you're a coach not from the nation you're coaching?
Yeah, I think you just invest in the people you're working with, and I don't think it's too different from even the club coaching when I first started in Ireland, for example, with Leinster, or even when I first started in Claremont with Claremont. I didn't speak any French, and people would say my accent is still really bad, but I speak it now, and so I invested in their culture and their language and tried to assimilate myself, but also to bring a real effort and endeavour to help them become better players and try to become the best version of themselves. So I think that formula still applies in a national side. And I think players recognise if you care about how they're developing and you're investing in them, they'll tend to invest in themselves and their teammates, and hopefully that will demonstrate that it doesn't matter where you originate from, you can still help build a successful national team other than the country of your birth.
Joe, you said yourself that you looked at that Australian team for the World Cup and it wasn't an Australian team that you recognised. Kind of two schools of thought on how those young blokes will come out of that experience. Either they'll be scarred for life, or they'll have learnt from that experience and they'll be better. What's your view on that? Do you see the nucleus of a side that can go forward, or do you think you need to start all over again?
I'd like to think that they'll emerge with an experience that they're desperate not to repeat, so they'll work hard toward getting the cohesion amongst themselves. I think that's a really important thing, to build a bit of continuity and selection and performance, consistency and performance. The only thing I'd probably ask is sometimes you've got to be a little bit patient with that. We're going to have some players who will have been put on the back foot by that, and if we can grow through the couple of Welsh games and the Georgia game, and then I just know how tough the Rugby Championship is. I've worked my way through the last couple and they've been really competitive. So I think what we've got in front of us is going to be really challenging, and I'm excited about trying to help those, especially those young guys that you mentioned, try to help them build their confidence and the repeatability of really positive performances.
Joe, what's sort of people you talked to before taking on the role, and will you or have you spoken to Dave Rennie, Eddie Jones, those guys about the landscape yet?
Yeah, I haven't really chatted to Eddie. I chatted to Dave, and I chatted to a lot of the coaches who've been involved in recent times, the assistant coaches, and it's obviously the consistent message is there's lots of work to do, and I'm not afraid of trying to do the work, and so I'm a realist, but I also know that I've seen these players play, but I don't know who they are, and I reckon getting to know who they are is as important as how they play. So that's part of the investment over the next 3, 4, 5 months, and also probably getting some people alongside me who are really invested in a similar way to try to bring the best out of these players.
Seems pretty clear that for Wallabies to be successful, Super Rugby teams need to be going better. So how hands-on will you be across the class?
Yeah, I think that's where I'd love to start. I'd love to get in and Les Kiss, I coached with Kissy for a couple of years, so he's up with the Reds, to get up and see him. Darren here, Chrono, those guys. Bernie obviously was, Stephen Larkham was coaching in Munster for a while, so it's a circuit that I've kind of lived on for 20 years, so you get to know a fair few people, and it'll be really good to get in and reconnect with some and connect with others and try to work out how they're going and what's really important to them and how they're building their team, so that we can try to collaborate and build some of that into how we put the Wallabies together.
Sorry, Joe, why have you taken on the role? Because you said you've obviously got your family stuff going on. You said you didn't think necessarily coaching a head coaching role. Wallabies are 9th at the moment in the rankings. There's a fair bit, maybe reasons why someone like your CV would go, hang on, this is a scary task. So why?
Yeah, I'm desperate for the Wallabies to be competitive, and if I can help, I'm here. That's why I'm here. And so, and I think the global rugby family is desperate for the Wallabies to be where they need to be. British and Irish Lions, they want to have a fantastic series. So we want to build toward that and give them exactly what they want. and not make anything easy for them. And 2 years after that, you've got a home World Cup, and we, I'm desperate that the Wallabies are really competitive in that World Cup, and we don't, we get through to those really competitive playoff rounds.
Peter, you arguably have a bigger job to do than Joe, but as soon as you were sort of announced or murmurs grew that you might be having that role, Joe's name became stronger and stronger in connection to the Wallabies. Why is his appointment, or how big of a piece of the puzzle is Joe's appointment in the bigger scheme of what your job will entail and how big your task is?
Well, Joe's the first appointment for us, for myself really. I've known Joe for a little while. We've worked together. Joe's got an international career that's well decorated, well documented, highly successful. But the other thing that you probably won't get to know yet, and you will get to know, is Joe's a very, very caring individual. It's a great human that actually really endears himself into a team and brings players forward. He cares about his staff, but he not only just that, he actually cares about what he does. And I think those two pieces, not only being a great coach, but also someone that's actually going to bring us together and bring us together on the journey, is really, really important, not only to create a team, but more broadly in terms of us creating an organisation that we're no longer about me, but we're about we. And we're going to be better as a group and build trust, not only within Rugby Australia, but more broadly in the rugby ecosystem. So Joe's really important as the number one starting point, but we've got a number of appointments that we need to make over the next coming period. We need to engage with our key stakeholders around alignment and centralisation, however you want to call it. And in that stage, we need to recruit more people, from heads of athletic performances to head of medical. We've got a number of roles that are currently vacant. So I think Joe's the first starting point on a journey of creating a really world-class team within Rugby Australia going forward.
You mentioned that buzzword there, centralisation.
Yep.
It's been on the tip of everyone's tongue in this game for years now.
Yep.
And with Joe's appointment and yourself and David Newsom in a consulting role later in the year, everyone
Yep.
thinks we're just going to copy Ireland, but how realistic is the comparison to what's been done in Ireland to what can be done?
Yeah, no, good question. Look, Australia's unique. I think I said in the last presser that we did when I first started, is that we have a federated structure. We're slightly different in that the way that we are governed as an organisation. But the critical thing is that we're not looking to cut and paste within an Irish or a New Zealand model or anywhere else. But there are pieces of the puzzle that actually exist within those structures. But we need to actually apply it to the context of Australia. And in doing so, when we edit or create, we need to create an aligned structure that works for us, with the right people, as Phil said before, in the right roles, that actually we all share in, whether it's the success. So whether Queensland is doing X, we're actually contributing together in Y, and if we are successful, we share in the success. And when we don't, then we review hard, we work hard together, and we find a solution that's going to be the way forward. And that should go across the whole ecosystem of the rugby, from the West Coast with the Force right down to the south, the Rebels, that we all work in collaboration and that we work in an aligned way. I hope that answers your question. Cool.
Joe, what's your view on trying to grow the game in Australia? A very different landscape to other countries you've coached in as well. The bloke before you was very keen to get out of the media and sell the dream. Will you be doing that, and do you understand the landscape, or is it more just about the footy?
Yeah, I'm not great at selling dreams. So dreams are not tangible. I'm a pragmatic sort of individual, probably characterised as boring. So I don't have the probably the charisma that Eddie has, but I'm really keen to get into clubs, and with the Irish model, Ireland, you're competing with soccer, but the biggest games in Ireland are Gaelic football and hurling. They have by far the most players. Rugby's only the fourth sport, so there are a few similarities in trying to grow the interest in the game. And one of the best ways to grow the interest is win games. People love to get along when they believe their team are going to be really competitive. And so I'll probably be a little bit narrow focused on trying to get to know the people, get to help them perform at their best, combine it at the best that we can as a team, because again I just think the flagship will drive some of that interest, and that interest will get kids aspiring to be part of what they see, and that can take a while, but it certainly happened in Ireland, in a very competitive place for players, and I think it is even more competitive here. It's tougher, but I still think there's a chance that we can attract enough positive attention that people will be positive about being involved in the game, supporting the game, and hopefully, back in a team that's really competitive.
And just given your family situation, the length of the deal, is it your intention to move to Sydney? I know you've been on the road a lot in Super Rugby and Test season.
Yeah, once you're in camp, you're not home anyway. So in the near future, I won't be, but certainly if it looks like I'm going to go longer, it would be my intention to be where I'm based, and if that's here or somewhere near here in Australia, then I have a son in Melbourne. Not that that's kind of the rugby base at the moment, but it's nice to have a bit of family over this side of the Tasman already.
Have you got an idea of assistance? I know that Phil kind of has in the past spoken about an Aussie flavour. Is that something that you're going to be bringing, or do you want to bring some guys that you already know and perhaps foreigners as well?
I think I'd most like to leave it just as an Aussie flavour at the moment. I'm very keen that it's predominantly Australian, but if we don't feel that someone's quite ready in a particular role, then it may include someone from outside of Australia. But that's one of the things about getting into the Super Rugby franchises and trying to ascertain who A might be interested and B might be keen. One of the things that we did in Ireland is guys like Felix Jones and Ron O'Gara. We took those guys away on tour with us for a week at a time when we were on tour, so that they got the experience and also contributed to the coaching group at that time. So there may be opportunity, if there aren't guys immediately involved, that we start to feed them in through that experience they can get of being hands-on and right at the coalface of that match week preparation.
And New Zealand currently doesn't allow players to be selected from overseas. What's your position on the overseas eligibility policy?
Well, there was nothing really stopping overseas selections in Ireland, but I know because they're so close to Europe, that would have been really detrimental to the Irish domestic competition, because it's a very competitive market in Europe. So we didn't select anyone who wasn't contracted in Ireland, and that worked really well for Ireland. So it's another one of those questions where I just want to find out a little bit more of what that looks like first. But it'd be great if we can select almost entirely, at least on Ireland, on island of Australia, or I don't want to preclude Tasmania, but from Australia, rather than chase guys from overseas.
Phil, the budget last year blew out quite significantly. It was mentioned publicly by the former administrator. Will there be stricter restrictions on Joe and his team on what they can spend this time around?
Yeah, look, I just think that's 101 running a disciplined business, and I'm very passionate about discipline on the field. We can't expect discipline on the field if you don't have discipline off the field, and we'll have the appropriate investment envelope for the Wallaby environment, which Pete will be responsible for. We've already had conversations around what management teams may look like, and what the budget will be around that. But we'll be really, really disciplined around actually how we spend money. It's no secret that we've taken on a debt facility, and we understand the pressures of our member unions and Super Rugby clubs and the pressure that we have in the community. So how we spend every dollar is really important.
Joe, the misty-eyed romantics all sort of long for the day of the great Wallabies running rugby, which was so successful. Is that a dead notion, that running rugby, or there's an Australian way? Do you have a view on what is the Australian way?
I don't particularly have a view until I get to know probably what the super clubs are doing a little bit more, and what they used to doing. Because I think if you try to metamorphosise a way of playing, when you get a prep week and a match week before your first test match, I just don't think you can do it. So what you've got to do is have it as an extension of the way they already play, meld some of the factors that are already done well, and then build bits as you go along. So, I don't think we're going to get to where we'd like to play immediately, and I've gone into a couple of environments in recent times, with the Blues, where I think we built our way forward into the way we wanted to play, and had a really successful season. And it was a bit the same with the All Blacks. That they'd had some hiccups, but they built their way forward and developed a game that really suited them. And so, I just know that getting a squad of 23 on a match day to all be perfectly aligned and comfortable with the way of playing, if you create too much differentiation between what they're used to and what you're expecting from them, I just think that's going to be too difficult to then gain any sort of consistent performance.
Joe, you've spoken about the Lions challenge, but what about the challenge of winning about the Bledisloe? You've obviously come straight out of All Blacks camp. Have you had any messages from those guys about what you're up to?
Yeah, I could have done without the story breaking yesterday, because I've been flooded, and there's a little bit of advice from a few of the boys, but I've no doubt if the shoe was on the other foot it'd go the other way as well. But they're good men, and they will turn up competitive, and we'll turn up and competitive, and I'd just love for the Bledisloe to be competitive. So the advantage of the Bledisloe, it's at the end of the Rugby Championship this year, so we will get a little bit of a run at it. We'll come back from Argentina, which is a tough place to go, and then try to aim up for that. But we've got a few games before that, so I'm a little bit. We've got to get some early wins, as I said earlier. And while that doesn't mean the outcome being the result of a win, we just got to be able to perform better, be more consistent in what we deliver, and I think then you build to getting the outcome more often than not. One of the things that people love about the sport is that you're never quite sure what you're going to get. And one of the things I love about rugby is how interdependent it is. You might get a star shooter in a team of 5 in a basketball game, but you can have a star player in rugby, but it's very hard for them to do much by themselves. So it's that connectivity, that inter-reliance, that building that in rugby, you don't do it overnight. So I'm really looking forward to seeing how we can fast track that as best we can, but at the same time, be realistic about where we are currently, and where we were at the end of last year, and create a base that's as solid as we can make it to build from.
Last couple, guys.
I feel there were some disappointed Aussie coaches who were in the mix for this, including a former teammate of yours. What's been the feedback to them, and be disillusioned that it didn't go to an Aussie?
No, I don't think so. I think they'll look at the credentials that Joe brings and be excited that Joe's going to be leading the national team. So I think it's more around excitement, and I know from our conversations that that connection with the Australian coaches and bringing Australian coaches through the system is really important. So I think from all the feedback I've already had, it's all been it's all been very, very positive and exciting. The fact that we've got someone so experienced. And with such a great track record, joining the Australian rugby system.
Sorry, Brett. Sorry, Tom.
No, fair enough.
Reports last night were that the more experienced Wallabies team were given a heads up about the appointment. Generally positive response from those players?
Yeah, I'll take that one. So I think that, and we can talk to over pretty quickly around the review of the 2023 season, and certainly building trust with the playing group is really important. But for absolute clarity, we didn't disclose who the successful candidate was. We just talked to the Wallaby players around the process that we've run, and ensuring that we've got absolute transparency and clarity for them as to how we ran the process and how we're going to get to a decision. So that was speculation that we'd actually disclosed the name.